This is the Fifth Estate Winning Headlines, your media police post. Brought to you by the Fort Hall School of Government, coming to you from Nairobi, Kenya. In this segment, we summarize some of the headlines that you might have missed this morning. But we also take a look at the political pieces that we call cartoons in this country. Today is the 6th of April, 2020, and I am 2J.
I'm Tom.
And I am DM. Let's take a look at today's headlines. On the Daily Nation, lock us up, Kenyans say. The Standard revealed how virus has hit households. And the Star, 68% call for total lockdown poll. The Standard, all the dailies are looking at a study that was undertaken about the effects, the economic effects of the coronavirus.
Yeah.
The Standard has taken the household level. It's more granular in its outlook, and it's commenting on how the study has shown that 27% of the Kenyans in the study have said that they do not have enough food to last them beyond just a few days.
Yeah.
They also point out that incomes have shrunk already for 8 out of 10 Kenyans.
Wow.
And they also say that out of the people who are able to participate in panic buying or stockpiling commodities, a big number of them, 80% of them, focused on home care products, personal items, food and painkillers. And they say that alcohol and cigarettes were not bought at all. Little to nil were purchased.
Wow.
That is so shocking. Knowing how Kenyans are, that is.
It's crazy. I mean, behavioral economics would tell you if you're going to the bar 3 times a week after coming from work, what you do is stock up on
Yeah, you take the bar to your home. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, people also drink when they're happy, when they're sad, when they're afraid. What is the Daily Nation telling us?
So the Daily Nation and the Star, I suppose we could take together, because they both look at the request coming from Kenyans to have the government institute a full lockdown. However, I want to say that this study was taken on by InfoTrash Research and Consulting, which we...
Do you mean InfoTrack?
I said what I said. And I think a lot of the time we do take issue with how they operate with their sampling sizes, the people that they do look for respondents. But they do say that 7 in 10 Kenyans are requesting that the government enforce a total lockdown. They say that also a majority of Kenyans are not taking this corona seriously, but also say that the government is exaggerating. So I think we're having a lot of polarizing feelings and opinions coming from the public.
Yes.
They also say that the government has been conducting silent pilot food distribution programs and issuing IDs to essential people. I don't know how seriously we could take this poll.
See, I'm having a problem grasping it. First, you cannot have a sample size of 831 people and
to represent the entire country.
It's a definitive study.
Absolutely. Second, the president cannot do a total shutdown without considering some measures. And in this case, I don't think the president should listen an iota to what these dailies are talking about because of 2 things. First, there has to be mechanisms to cushion those who live on a day-to-day basis, from hand to mouth, right? If you don't have those mechanisms, what you would be asking for if you impose a shutdown is a revolution of sorts. But I'll not go there for now. What I want to do is this. There are 2 solutions the president, I think, has in these testing times. And the first solution is he has a framework called the provincial administration. It runs from top to down, regional commissioners to chiefs. Now, if he was to use the census numbers and give this to chiefs, chiefs can actually regiment communities in every single ward per name, per household. And then private sector can actually come in now and do and plug in and support using food items and all that to be able to incentivize the masses not to go to work or to move around. But second, there's also the framework of using other countries that are doing this. For example, India, we spoke about it last week, has a population of 1.3 billion people. But they have taken up measures to cushion their masses just in case they're not going to work. First measure is to give over 80 million families gas cylinders so that they can cook. We're also giving them daily rations, food, mafuta ya kupikia, and that kind of thing. But also they're earning a little bit of money. Every, I think 200 women are getting receiving $6 every single month. That is a cushion just in case things go bust.
Okay, so should we go to a lockdown? The government should look at models that have happened in other spaces, in other countries in the world. They should be innovative and partner with corporates and other people. And finally, they should use existing networks.
And I think
like
talking about those existing networks, I
yeah.
think one crazy idea too, I think that you were trying to throw out there, is the use of gangs.
Yes,
right? If you look at countries like Brazil and Berlin, gang members and drug dealers have been the ones instituting lockdowns, telling their people, if the government is not going to do it for you, we're going to ensure that it happens.
Do you know why I say that? Look, Kenya police, how many are they in total number? Then all the cops, it's about 120,000. The standing army is about 26,000 people.
Not enough.
That cannot take care of 47 million Kenyans. What you need to do is supplementing or complementing strategies or functions. Why not, for example, use Mongiki?
Also, are we saying that at the moment, at the place where we are now, the only choice that the government is facing is lockdown?
No, I don't think that's true. I think that if we were to look at what's being used globally, there are 4 options the government has. Right now, we're using option number 1, social distancing, and I think that's the most easy measure we can use. 2, we have lockdown, which could potentially be happening in the next few days. Number 3 is herd immunity. JM had mentioned this last week. It's kind of allowing as many people as possible to have to be exposed to the virus, hoping that they become immune. That is very, very risky. And the fourth one rather, is a vaccine option, which we hope to see in the next 18 months if possible. But I think there's been a lot of discussion about the use of vaccines and the ethics around it.
Yeah, and speaking of the vaccine, sorry to interrupt you, Tivan.
It's okay.
There's a video that emerged of, and I think you referred to it on Friday, of 2 French doctors discussing how the vaccine can be tested in Africa for 2 reasons. One, because Africa does not have the protective gear that the rest of the world has. We don't have masks and etc. according to them. And secondly,
they think we're using gunias.
No. I've even forgotten the second reason, but I will. No, I've remembered.
Yes, fantastic.
The second reason is they were comparing it to a model that was applied in the 90s, which is with the emergence of AIDS, vaccinations were tested amongst a specific demographic, which is a population of prostitutes. And so this is what they were comparing the Africa to now. I would just say that we are not a continent of lab rats, which is what they see us as black guinea pigs. And the thing that they did not say, which they thought, is that there's less risk legally in using Africans as lab rats. If this vaccine is administered in Africa and there's we all grow tails and horns, for instance, they will not face the kind of backlash or damages that they would in Europe or in other Western parts of the globe. So we must reject this racist science.
If the French had said this and suggested that Jews should be the ones to get this treatment, Mossad would have moved in on them and they'd be out by now.
We have a 3-part criteria that we use to analyze the headlines for you. We ask, is the headline topical or speculative? Is it repetitive or groundbreaking? And finally, is the headline thoughtful or is it just plain lazy?
I would go with the Daily Nation. Lock us up, Kenyans say.
So would I.
Lock us up.
Even if we doubt how many Kenyans.
So we will toast the rest, and the Daily Nation gives us our winning headline. On to the political pieces that we call cartoons in this country, and just like the headlines, we have a 3-part criteria that we use to analyze them for you. We ask, is the cartoon humorous or dry? Is it satirical or pessimistic? And finally, is it effective or just plain lazy?
And we begin with Iga. Iga has the evolution of man, and the first man is covering himself with a leaf. The second is a hunter and gatherer. He has a spear and he has just a small, is it an underwear? And a quiver, it's called a quiver, correct? And next is a Maasai guy with a shuka. Next is a colonial chief. Next guy is a guy in a suit, corporate looking guy. And now the guy who looks like
in a hazmat suit.
In a hazmat suit.
With corona on their mind.
With corona on their mind.
This is a good cartoon.
It is a good cartoon. I mean, considering that we do not always appreciate Iga's, comic strip Mondays.
Absolutely. So we put that on the
side. It's a good offering.
Yes. We go to Gamzo. And Gamzo has Wilson Sossion, NAT Secretary General, and he's standing atop the virus corona.
Why is corona smiling?
And corona is smiling.
Because it's happy with what Sossion is saying.
And Sossion is saying the government cannot use boarding school facilities in treating victims of COVID-19.
That's a beautiful impression. You know what? I think Sossion at this point, this is very disappointing. He's just seeking relevance. And he's not being a team player. What I'd like to say to Sossion and to other leaders, politicians in the corporate world, there is life after COVID. And after COVID, you're going to face Kenyans on Judgment Day.
Yeah.
And we're going to ask, what did you do at this time when Kenyans needed you the most? The Kenyans who, from our taxes, pay your salary. The Kenyans who patronize your establishments. What did you do? How did you respond?
Definitely.
And if we find that you fell short, then we will. It is eternal damnation for you.
Yes, very, very true.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more. Next is ozone. And ozone is a caricature of new CS Mutahi Kagwe, standing next to Raila Odinga, Prophet William Ruto back there, Sonko and his funny headgear, and Uhuru Kenyatta behind a screen. And what they're doing is holding a stick that is multi-pronged to the youth.
Yeah.
And the youth right there, they have toilet paper and sanitizer. And he's being prodded to go towards Corona. And the caption there is, this time you get the long end of the stick.
Yeah.
Tujay had a thesis.
Yeah, so, okay. My issue with the cartoon is I think that it's multi-layered and a bit confused. But what it's making reference to is Mutahi Kagwe, I think it was yesterday or the day before, said that, he urged the youth to use their energy and their organizational prowess to organize a country against this fight in Corona. And I think he said specifically, I wish to appeal to the youth to become part of the solution by taking certain measures that will bolster the fight against the disease. So I think what Ozone is talking about is quite often we see the youth getting the short end of the stick, whether it's in terms of resources or attention. And so now when it comes to a disease, knowing full well that the youth are most likely to be the spreaders of the disease and most likely to be the ones to survive thereafter, I think we're now getting the long end of the stick, but it's a catch-22. I'm not sure what the...
Yeah, I'm not understanding it 100% because I don't see how Mutahi Kagwe's remarks translate to pushing the youth towards the virus.
So, if anything,
And I don't know why Prophet Owori is back there also in this cartoon. However, I think Iga's cartoon, not only is it humorous, it's factual and interesting. What do you think?
I think Iga wins for me.
I think that's the second time we might have awarded him.
I have never spoken.
Well done, Iga. The Daily Nation gives us our winning cartoon.
Absolutely. Right.
What is our final thought?
And now...
Can I toss the cartoons first?
Yes.
Sorry. There we go.
And now our final thought. It is inspired by a book entitled Switch, How to Change Things When Change is Hard. And it's by Chip Heath and Dan Heath. And just in case you had some doubts, these are brothers. They are not married.
Thank you for that insightful clarification. So this week, some of the themes that we want to look at is adjusting to a new normal. I think in the lead up to a possible lockdown, to maybe a vaccine, to several things that may happen, we want to see how we can help you adjust to what may be coming. So today we want to look at Switch, how to change things when change is hard. So this book asks the question, why is it so hard to make new and lasting changes in our companies, lives, communities, and governments? And the primary obstacle, they say, is a conflict that is built into our brains. And they say that psychologists have discovered that our minds are ruled by two different systems, the rational mind and the emotional mind. And so in this book, the core thesis comes from another story called The Elephant and the Rider, from psychologist Jonathan Haidt's book, The Happiness Hypothesis. So he says that our emotional side is an elephant and our rational side is a rider. So if you were just to imagine this scenario, you have a rider sitting on top of an elephant, and the rider holds the reins and seems to be the leader, seems to be in charge of directing where the elephant goes.
Correct.
But the rider's control is not secure because the rider is actually so much smaller in comparison to this huge elephant. So anytime the huge elephant and the small rider have a conflict or disagree about what direction to go in, the rider is going to lose because he's completely outmatched. And this takes us back to another book that we had looked at last year called Blink by Malcolm Gladwell, where he talks about dual process theory. So he talks about system 1, which is the left hemisphere of the brain, and system 2, which is the right hemisphere. Oh, sorry, I've swapped that. System 1 is the right hemisphere of the brain, and system 2 is the left hemisphere of the brain. So your right side is intuitive, it's automatic, it's non-logical, it's emotional, and it's unconscious. But your left side it's full of reasoning. It's controlled, it's logical, rational, and conscious. So the rational mind wants a beach body. It wants to be ready for the summer. But the emotional mind wants to eat cake. The rational mind wants to stay at home and social distance, but the emotional mind wants to go to the bar and grab a pint with your friends.
You would know.
So this book is here to help you change these things at every level, at the individual, organizational, and societal level. Because for anything to change, someone has to start that change. And ultimately, they say in this book that all change boils down to the same mission. Can you get people to start behaving in a completely different way? So they say that there are hard changes and there are easy changes. And the authors suggest that successful changes always share something in common. They require the leader of change, and in this case, I think we could talk about the president. They require the leader of change to do 3 things at one time to change behavior. The first thing is to change a person's situation. That is to make the path with which we're going to follow this change very clear. The second is to influence their heart. You have to, focus on that emotional elephant. And the third is to influence their mind, focusing on the rational rider. But the problem, of course, at the end of the day, is that the heart and the mind often disagree very violently. So I think that is quite a simple summary of what this book talks about.
Very succinct.
So like you too, Jay, when I was reading this book, I definitely applied it to the situation that we are in here. And what caught my eye is implementing change is like riding an elephant, as you said. Choose a direction, give your elephant some peanuts, and stick to an easy path.
Love it, love it.
The authors do not say that when it's curfew time, you whip the elephant. Anyway, so there's this Kenyan lamentation for Serikali Saidia, government help us. And it is so valid at this point because we are relying very heavily on the government to steer us from or away from this disaster or this pandemic. So in the analogy, the government is then the rider and we are the elephants. And it's about, as you said, the elephants are very strong. We are powerful, we are strong-willed, and we can be stubborn. And then it falls upon the government to change our behavior, because this is what the coronavirus pandemic calls for, a change in behavior, which is very difficult at an individual level, which the authors talk about, but it's even more difficult at an organizational or at a national level like we are in now. So in order to change our behavior, they suggest 2 things that the government must do in our application. First is to avoid decision paralysis. The author says the more choices we have, the less able we are in making a decision. And this is just a human tendency. Many alternatives confuse us. In this situation, for instance, self-quarantine presents many alternatives. And that is why it is effective. And that is why the government then has to institute a curfew or a lockdown. If you're in self-quarantine, you may say, okay, I will just hang out with my friends because I know them. So we can go and have a drink, as Tujay, you were giving us an example. But then it falls on the government to then say, no, you have to be in your homesteads at 7 so that you don't have these interactions and making those judgments that might actually expose you to the virus. So while it may look like resistance at the public level, it's actually a lack of clarity on what to do next. So the curfew gives us clarity. 7, you're in the house. Lockdown gives us clarity. The second thing that the government should do in this situation to change our behavior is evoke strong emotions, which you also alluded to, Jay. The book says the emotion evoked to get the elephant moving is either positive, which means which is something like desire, or negative, like fear. A negative emotion like fear can highlight a sense of urgency, which is something that we need now as a collective. Urgency, and it will narrow down the public's focus to fix a problem, and not only to fix it, but to fix it quickly, because it gives us a sense of shock and outrage. There are 2 examples I'd like to draw from. The Nigerian government has done just that. They're telling people something like, it is your choice. We are telling you to social distance, but it's your choice. You either keep 6 feet apart from somebody in order to prevent you or to protect you from the virus, or you go 6 feet under. So the government is basically telling Nigerians, if you don't listen to us, you will die. And they're not causing panic, but they're just demonstrating the gravity of the situation. The other context is in the 90s. During the AIDS pandemic, when there was an anti-AIDS crusade by not just Kenyan governments, but governments around the world. That crusade was harsh. There were documentaries, very graphic documentaries that were produced showing ill people, people suffering from AIDS. There were posters. I remember growing up and looking at posters that were very shocking, showing the trajectory of a reckless couple that goes all the way to them being skeletons
in a coffin.
So it's not about panic, but it's about demonstrating the severity or the graveness of the situation by evoking emotions from the stubborn elephant.
Yeah, and that's the role of the leader who wants to institute change.
I love it. I love it. Guys, my takeaway from this was the chapter, grow your people. And here the central thesis of this is you need to have a growth mindset. And the only variable that misses in a growth mindset is the accommodation of the word failure. You see, he says that we all think like businessmen. We think in two stages. You plan and you execute. But what you fail to realize is that in everything you do, failure is a must. And he says that the lesson from this is that we do not have a learning stage or practice stage in the middle. So for example, if we do a dry run of situation or a scenario, that could happen, then you're much more prepared for failure if it comes towards you. And he says you cannot do salsa without failing. You cannot be a scientist. Salsa dancing. You cannot be a scientist without failing. You cannot be a doctor without failing. Failure is a necessary variable to growth. And there's something he raised to me that I found very profound. He says, so how is that you keep the elephant motivated not to give up? And the answer may sound strange. You need to create the expectation of failure, not the failure of mission itself, but failure en route. Failure in progression. It will lead you to success. Now, I want to, guys, I want to dedicate this chapter to President Uhuru Kenyatta. And you see, and I want to do this as an encouragement note. Who would have thought? This corona thing, to me, is a black swan moment.
Yes.
Nobody expected it. We thought anti-BBI things would be the biggest threat to Uhuru Kenyatta or the economy going bust. But now we probably could be headed much faster into economic doldrums than we could have realized. And as not just to Uhuru Kenyatta, it's to possibly anyone seeking leadership in future, that things like this can happen and could actually stop you in your tracks. But there's also a time to wake up, dust yourself up, and continue the journey to success.
And I think part of that is looking at what the globe is doing, not in terms of blueprints that we should copy, but lessons.
Precisely.
You know, what worked for South Korea may not work for Kenya. What worked in Italy may not work here. So I think it's just, you know, keeping your hand on the moment and seeing what other countries are doing and using them as lessons to implement quickly.
And lessons to be decisive. Thank you for joining us on a day when we had a double win from the Daily Nation, who gave us the winning headline and the winning cartoon from Iga. Please subscribe to our YouTube channels. You can also find us on your TV screens. We're on Star Times, GoTV, and Pang free to air. Stay at home as much as you can. See you tomorrow.